Welcome back to the Tech Startup Network podcast. Joining me today is Mike Chambers, an entrepreneur and growth marketer who has built and sold ventures across tech and media. He's currently the founder and CEO of Ridley, a company redefining how people buy and sell homes using AI. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Ashley.
Yeah, thanks for being here. I'm looking forward to having you share more about who you are and what you do, so feel free to dive right in.
Cool. Yeah. Well, first off, thanks again for having me on the show. I have somewhat of an unusual background. I actually started my career down in DC. I always thought I was going to sort of get involved in law or politics in some capacity, and quickly realized down in DC that it was not the right place for me. So sort of left Washington and started the first of two international education organizations. I've always sort of had a very strong desire to have a purpose behind what I do every day. And First organization was in Kenya, all in education, all sort of serving impoverished communities. And the second organization I started was an organization in Haiti, which was much larger. It's called Summits Education. We built around 42 schools serving 10,000 students. And it was a really great experience. And sort of throughout that career, I also sort of moonlighted as a professional mountain athlete. I led a bunch of expeditions around the world, and was very fortunate to get to do a lot of really cool things. And in 2018, was sort of looking to start a family, and the nonprofit world does not pay particularly well, and I was sort of tired of also living below the poverty line, and decided to start my first software venture. Partnered with the co-founder of kayak.com, Paul English, to co-found a company called Moonbeam, which was an audio discovery platform that we eventually sold to Audacy, which is another audio streaming platform. And sort of stayed in the tech space from there. I was continued in the audio space actually for a while, and sort of left with the intention of going 0 to 1 again. I wasn't entirely sure, what I wanted to do. I knew that I wanted it to be meaningful, and really stumbled upon this opportunity with Ridley, like, very organically. And I'm happy to kind of jump into that story, or I can pause, or
Yeah, go for
you let
it.
me know. Yeah. So the Ridley origin story was interesting in the sense that I have zero background in real estate, um, other than I've purchased homes previously and have sold homes previously. But I was looking to sell my house in Boulder, Colorado, which is where I live now with my family, and started interviewing real estate agents here in town, and couldn't find an agent who was willing to list my house for what I thought was a fair rate. I was looking at, well over $100,000 in commissions. And it wasn't that I was unwilling to pay for a service. It was mainly that I just didn't feel that the price I was being asked to pay was reflected in the service that I was being offered. And so I sort of thought to myself, like, I've handled large transactions. I'm a marketer. How hard can this be? Right? Famous last words. Um, and so I started sort of going down this rabbit hole of learning what it would take to just sell my house and understand whether or not it's complicated. Um, and Ran into a few barriers kind of early in that journey. Like, this is kind of you know, maybe a little bit too much detail, but Colorado is what's known as a minimum service state, which means that uh, agents are required by law to perform a minimum set of services on your behalf if you want to get your home on the MLS. And as a for sale by owner seller, I knew that it was really important for me to get my home on the MLS. So it was syndicated to all the major home buying sites. And that law is used sort of as a reason why brokers charge a very high fee just to get on the MLS in the state of Colorado. Now, in most states, you can pay a small flat fee of $99 and get your home listed on the MLS, and Colorado is very much an outlier. And I got really frustrated by that. It felt like there's just so many roadblocks in this system that sort of funnel consumers into working into this sort of legacy model. And I decided, much to my wife's dismay, at 9:30 p.m. one night, that I was going to create an Instagram account and document my journey of trying to sell my house, outside of the system, and highlight the ways in which this industry is failing consumers. And I posted the first video. The whole concept was like, this is day one of trying to sell my house without a real estate agent, and follow my journey. And the video went viral, and it was sort of clear that, I had tapped into this underlying frustration amongst consumers. I had also angered a lot of real estate agents. But it really sort of sparked a kind of 2-month long journey of me highlighting everything that I encountered as I was going through this process. And as I was going through the process, I was using all these different platforms. I was researching state forms on the government website and using ChatGPT to answer questions and going to Zillow to build a listing. And it was sort of crazy to me that in this AI era, there wasn't a single centralized platform to help a consumer navigate this transaction, using software. And I had the good fortune of having built this very large community and had a lot of feedback and a lot of people sort of giving me ideas and giving me feedback. And I spent a little bit of time really just listening to people to understand, whether or not I'm an outlier, or whether or not other people would really want something like this. And so after, a few months of going through my own home sale, I decided that I wanted to build this platform. And so we raised a small pre-seed round initially from Moxie Ventures, which is a fund that's split between the Bay Area and Colorado and Boulder, and sort of went head down to build the first version of Ridley. And really, the vision with Ridley is we want to use AI to guide consumers through this process of selling their home. We're primarily focused on the sell side of the transaction. Eventually, we'll be expanding into the buy side. So this is everything from pricing to home preparation to vendor booking and coordination, MLS or listing creation and distribution, negotiation guidance, transaction coordination, everything that happens throughout the transaction. But also giving them the ability to call on experts for the moments of the process where they might want a second opinion, right? Mm-hmm. So, this is the largest financial transaction that most people will make in their lives, right? It's something you do, I think the average home ownership length is 9 years, right? It's not a frequent transaction. It's not something you're doing all of the time. And there are times where having human judgment, in the process is actually really valuable, especially to manage the emotional component to it, help you understand maybe what your options are, just get a second opinion on that. So we do have this sort of human in the loop component to the product. So we launched in Colorado in July. We have since sold over 250 homes. The average seller is saving $42,000 per transaction. They are also outperforming traditional agent represented listings on days on market and list to sold price ratio. So they're saving more and they're performing better on those metrics anyhow. And it's been an incredible journey so far. We were very fortunate to be able to raise our seed round last fall, or I guess in the winter, led by Fifth Wall, which is one of the largest prop tech funds in the country. And really have been sort of focused on building out this sort of system and the software to really support all of the various edge cases in real estate transactions, all of the nuances of compliance and regulatory, differentiation from state to state. And so, yeah, that's sort of the whole journey.
Oh my gosh, what a journey. And it makes me wonder too, what if you never even decided to sell your house? Would this idea even come? It kind of is
No,
a crazy thing to think about.
No, definitely not. I was not planning to jump into another startup. The actual plan was we bought some land down in Costa Rica. I've got 3 young kids. We were going to kind of go pour into them for a few years while they're still young. And this was I didn't have this on my life bingo card, but here we are.
I know it's funny how life works out. But I think it's really interesting too, especially as you mentioned you didn't have any real estate experience. And so did you find that that was a big learning curve? Of course, you're documenting your journey on that Instagram account, but getting into the industry, did you find that there were hurdles that you faced because you were so new to it?
I think, well, so one, the answer is yes. The real estate is incredibly complicated from a regulatory perspective and a compliance perspective. And there are so many variables that come up throughout the transaction. It's really hard to account for all of these variables, right?
Hmm.
And this is kind of one of the reasons why I don't think until this AI era it was ever possible to have a software platform be able to maintain complete context of what's happening throughout the transaction and actually give valuable advice based on the complete context of things. Like, how are you going to account for an edge case appraisal gap or a weird inspection objection or any of these things that kind of come up throughout the transaction? So there has been a steep learning curve. I mean, I've been very fortunate to surround myself with really, bright, experienced people in real estate to help, expedite some of my learning. And really, with every company that I've built or project I've been a part of, the best learning comes from the people that you're trying to serve, right? And
Hmm.
in our case, we are very much so consumer obsessed. Like, I think, everything we do at Ridley is through the lens of how does this benefit the consumer, um, and we've learned a lot in a very short period of time around how to make this process and experience better for them.
Absolutely. And I believe you mentioned you launched in July, was it that you
Yep.
started? Yeah, so in the throughout these past few months, like how have you changed and evolved? I'm sure there's been some changes that have gone on, or if you pivoted. I always love hearing a good pivot story.
Yeah. So um, I've always been of the mindset, and like there's like a lot of sort of quotes on this, and I think a lot of really successful technology entrepreneurs sort of share this philosophy of this concept of, if you're not embarrassed when you ship your first product, you waited too long. And we very much so had that. I always joke about the first sort of landing page that we built for Ridley was, uh, horrible. I mean, I pull it up all the time and show the team. And really, the first product that we launched with was very basic, right? It was a checklist of what someone would need to do throughout the transaction, and a chatbot that was trained on the knowledge base of their market conditions and real estate transactions and compliance and all that other stuff. And we had the opportunity to obviously have people sell their home using that sort of minimally viable product and learn sort of what are the features that we really need to push on, and what do we actually need to do to make this good. So the product has really evolved since then. So where it started as a sort of static checklist, it is now completely transaction state aware. We've built this intelligence service that is keeping track of all correspondence throughout the transaction, every text message, every email, every document, everything. It's able to analyze it and create these workflows for a seller, or actually do tasks on behalf of a seller as it comes up throughout the transaction. And really, like, I think the thesis here is I believe we're going to move from a world where the agent is the center of the transaction, sort of managing all aspects associated with the process, to a world where the consumer or the platform is the center of the transaction, and agents sort of shift into these supporting roles for these high stakes moments. And we will see, and just not, it's not just, unique to real estate. Like, we will absolutely see a reduction in the number of real estate agents as a result of that.
Hmm.
Um, but when you actually like look at the data, over 70% of real estate agents last year didn't close a single transaction. There are a lot of agents. This industry has long suffered from a barrier to entry problem where it's relatively easy to get your license, and there's not a lot of guidance on helping people actually be really good at what they do. And there are some really great agents who do all of the transactions for the most part. And I think that we'll probably see a lot fewer of the sort of hobbyist real estate agents who are kind of doing it on the side, occasionally, maybe once every few years, closing a deal. And the sort of high performing agents are going to be operating at the top of their license, a lot higher volume of transactions, and they'll probably do better than ever, right? Um, so I think that, this is probably true of many industries and where things are going. And I think that there's sort of a collection of professionals who recognize it and are leaning into it. And then there are, of course, folks who are really scared by it, understandably, and are not leaning into it very much. But that's sort of my prediction and sort of philosophy on where things are heading in real estate specifically.
Yeah. And you mentioned that you plan to start rolling out the buy aspect of that. I'd love to hear from what you're able to share more of your plans in that capacity.
Yeah, I mean, we very intentionally started on the sell side of the transaction.
Mhm.
When a homeowner thinks about selling their home, they immediately start doing commission math. How much equity will I have to carry over into the next purchase, right? And they feel that pain like most acutely.
Mhm.
There's almost this perception amongst home buyers that agents are sort of included in this process. You never really sort of see the bottom line that's going out to the agent. You're just buying the house, um, and that was something we learned very quickly from interviewing buyers and sellers in the early days. And because of that, there's a lower sort of willingness to pay for a service that promises to help you actually get a lower price, pay a lower price for the home.
Mhm.
But when you look at the data, like I think it's over 90% of homes now are found on platforms like Zillow and Redfin and Realtor.com. And they're found by the consumer, right? Who's sort of, laying in bed late at night and looking at houses they can't afford and, finding the one that they want to buy. Um, so really like, I think the vision on the buy side of the transaction is like some of the friction right now to buy a home without an agent is really like it's really hard to schedule showings unless you're working with an agent. The industry does a really good job of sort of making sure you're working with an agent before sort of getting you into the house. So solving that problem, submitting offers, again, like there's a whole process that you need to go through to submit an offer that would be taken seriously by a seller. So being able to guide buyers through that process of submitting offers, and then navigating the contract to close process. So this same intelligence service that we've built for sellers will be sort of drag and drop equally valuable for buyers in the transaction. And also, sorry, the lights just turned off. One
That's
second.
okay.
Sorry, I was just going to say, and also, you know, if we're going to be like intellectually honest with ourselves about sort of solving problems for the consumer in this industry, we have to look at some of the upstream inefficiencies that are driving up costs for agents.
Mhm.
And, a lot of people don't realize this, but agents have incredibly high brokerage splits. Oftentimes they'll pay 30% of the commission to their brokerage. They have all sorts of fees to be members of NAR and members of the MLSs. If they take a lead from a platform like Zillow, that's another 40% that they have to pay to Zillow for the lead. So there's all these inefficiencies in this process for agents as well. And so we are very much so looking to expand some of this technology that we've built to introduce more efficiencies in the transaction for agents and help them, potentially have more room to be more reasonable on their fees with consumers.
Yeah, which I think is huge because especially like houses are from the buy side are becoming increasingly more difficult for the younger generation to even be able to afford to buy. So I
Totally.
think, as you mentioned, by being able to make it possible for the agents to kind of cut back on the money that they're taking, I'm sure that will help to support younger generations who want to be able to have the opportunity to purchase their first home.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We are very much so in the middle of like of a housing crisis in our country.
Mhm.
Affordability is at an all-time low, and it's a serious problem. Like home ownership is literally the foundation of the American dream, and it's further and further out of reach for the average consumer. And it's a really important problem that, we work on collectively as a society. And I feel very fortunate to be able to work on it.
Absolutely. So, in addition to building out the buy side, is there anything else coming up for Ridley in the coming year of new features that you might be adding or new capabilities that you're able to share with us?
We've recently launched some really interesting features on the sell side of the platform. Obviously, this like intelligence service, has now made the platform completely transaction state aware. So it knows everything that's happening. But we've also started to introduce some really powerful tools around like marketing your home.
Hmm.
Um, for instance, one of the features we've just released, with the click of a button, regardless of what marketing experience you have or anything, our platform can generate really beautiful creative of your listing, build a targeting list for ad targeting, set up the ads, do all of the distribution of the ads, and continuously optimize the ads on your behalf. Again, it's just clicking of a button. So introducing more and more tools to help the everyday person market their listing in their home like a pro, is something that I actually think is also part of the reason why our listings are performing so well, because
Hmm.
you're not just getting your house on the MLS. Like, that is not a marketing strategy. That is sort of bare minimum what everyone should be doing. To really sort of differentiate your listing, you need to do more, right? So features like that we're really excited about. Trying to think, we also introduced you know really the levers that you have as like a consumer, like the levers that you have control over prior to going to market, are how you price your home. So
Hmm.
making sure that like your pricing is really accurate and rooted in reality. Um, how you prepare your home. So what does that look like in terms of, have you decluttered it? Have you staged it properly? Have you done all these things? And then how you present your home, like making sure your listing looks really beautiful and professional. And so one of the features that we just introduced is like our home prep walkthrough feature, whereby you take us through your home with your phone. That's photography and video. Um, and our model sort of analyzes everything that it sees and gives you rank ordered recommendations on what improvements to make, how to prepare for staging, everything prior to going to market, so that you're really well informed and well prepared. So things like that. It's really leaning into the aspects of the transaction that we know have the highest leverage for our sellers, and really giving them as many tools as possible to help set them up for success.
Really interesting that you brought that up because that was one thing I was wondering about is if there's that intelligence piece incorporated where Ridley would be able to tell people, oh, you might need a new roof in order to sell your home, or might need to think about a septic
Correct.
system and things like that. That can make a huge difference in the amount of money you're able to sell your home for.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So what this tool does is it will analyze things. It will it's all using computer visioning. It will flag like major issues. It will also connect you directly with vendors
Hmm.
to be able to resolve anything prior to going to market. And when you go to sell your home, like there are some things that have really high impact on on your sale price, and some things that aren't really worth it, right?
Hmm.
So it helps you kind of understand that trade off of, yeah, if your roof has a huge hole in it, you probably want to get that fixed.
Yeah.
But if your kitchen cabinets are maybe a little bit dated, you might actually not get that return on your investment if you go and redo your whole kitchen prior to going to market. So like
Mhm.
understanding those little nuances, much like a real estate agent would be able to provide, just using software.
Yeah, definitely. And I love that you mentioned the vendor piece as well, because that's a huge B2B opportunity is connecting with plumbers or painters or whoever else might be and just being able to help bring them business as well.
Exactly. So any vendor that one could potentially need throughout the transaction can be booked in the platform. Um, so it's everything from handymen, inspectors, photographers, stagers, anything you need. It's designed to sort of keep everything in one place and make it really easy. Of course, you can use any vendor you want if you have one that you prefer. But that was part of it as well, because like vendors are a major component to the home sale transaction, from
Mhm.
beginning to end.
Yeah, definitely. And a question for you, Mike, about your journey specifically, since you've had a few other businesses before starting Ridley. I'd love to hear what you've learned just throughout the time of being an entrepreneur and what advice you'd give to other founders who are listening to this episode.
Yeah, I mean, um, I think like maybe the main theme for my sort of career has been like I'm a very curious person.
Mhm.
I am when I sort of get interested in something, I get kind of obsessed with something and really want to understand why things work and challenge assumptions and really go deep. And I think it's also kind of like it's something that's sort of, I think I'm born with, but it's also something that I've learned through observation of other really, people that I look up to, mentors of mine that I've seen. Um, and so like, yeah, like having curiosity and doing your best to surround yourself with people that, um, you look up to and you want to be like. I think that's another thing is like, I do think there's a lot of truth to this concept of you being the product of the 5 people you spend the most time with, and
Hmm.
really seek out those mentors. And you'd always be surprised that, you know, if you show enough willingness and enough drive, like it's not just, hey, I want to grab coffee. It's, here's how I think I can add value. I've already done this one thing. I'd love to get your feedback on it. Really show initiative beyond just sort of saying hello.
Hmm.
Um, and it really does work, and it really does make you better and help you learn. Yeah, and I think you've got to also just be okay with failure too, because
Yeah.
there's a lot of failures, there's a lot of ideas, there's a lot of things that um, that you think are great ideas that don't work out,
Hmm.
and you've got to sort of be kind of unflappable with all that stuff and not let it sort of define you as a person. Um, because that is very much so part of this. It's not all success, right?
Yeah. And I can imagine that there probably is a crossover from being an endurance athlete into your life as a founder with learning resilience and keep going when things get hard and picking yourself up when you don't achieve something that you hope to.
Yeah, I mean it's sort of cheesy, but it's 100% accurate. Like the ability to suffer is actually something you can train yourself on by repetition. And
Hmm.
I do think, there's a friend of mine here in Boulder who's the CEO of a CPG company called Scratch Labs. It's like a very successful, like
Is it
performance sports
carbs?
nutrition. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's
Yep.
carbs for yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
His name's Ian, and he exclusively seeks to hire former endurance athletes and kind of ex-military, because they have this they've in their lives sort of understood what it means to suffer and persevere and keep going when it's incredibly uncomfortable. And everything's telling you to stop, but you got to just kind of keep going. And so I do think that that has certainly helped me a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, and I haven't looked too much into it, but there are studies out there that show the crossover of like supporting yourself physically makes a huge impact on yourself professionally and just being able to support you in that capacity.
Yeah, I mean it's funny because like I completely agree with that. I will say like uh this sort of cycle of AI is moving so fast right now.
Hmm.
And you would actually think that it would mean that you're working less because everyone is like 10 times more productive. I'm actually working like more than I've ever worked in my entire life. And I've actually like not been listening to my own advice of like staying super active and really taking care of myself. But it is 100% true. Like you've gotta, it is definitely a marathon, and starting a company, it's not a sprint. You've got to,
Hmm.
be able to sort of weather a lot of different storms, and it's very easy to get burnt out. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Boulder having a great community. I always love to ask our listeners to share why their city is such a great place to build a company. So, in your opinion, why Boulder is a great area for tech?
I think so. It really sort of depends on what industry you're building in, right?
Hmm.
If you're working on like a foundational model company or a B2B AI company, you kind of have there's no reason why you shouldn't be in the Bay Area. Like I think I heard this stat yesterday that like something around 90% of the wealth that has been created in AI is in like a 4 mile radius of the Bay Area.
Hmm.
Like that is kind of where it is. And there's this energy right now in the Bay Area that's, palpable around this. If you're building in other verticals that don't necessarily require you to be selling to other companies, and like if you're in my case, like in consumer and real estate, I think it's less important. And then because of that, I sort of think through like, in order for me to be successful in persevering throughout the sort of life cycle of a startup, like I need to make sure that my family is really happy and, in a really great community. And Boulder very much so offers that. It's an incredible place to raise kids. There's an incredible community here of, you know, active founders and exited founders and executives from Google and, sort of everything in between. So you've got really a good mix, and of course, like there are really great investors here in the state of Colorado. I would say I'm a little bit nervous about the future of Colorado right now.
Mhm.
In less than 2 months, I think it's, yeah, like sometime at the end of June, Colorado's set to pass the Colorado AI bill or something along those lines, which I would argue is like one of the most ambiguous AI laws that I've seen yet to come across. There's very little guidance on how builders in this space are like meant to sort of respond to this and be compliant with.
Mhm.
And there are laws like this that I think are sort of increasingly starting to happen in Colorado that is making it less of a desirable place to want to start a company. That said, there's a very strong community of people who are pushing back on this and really trying to, preserve Colorado's place as a viable place to build, innovative companies. And so
Mhm.
I don't know if I just sold Boulder or didn't sell Boulder, but um, like I love Boulder for the community. I love Boulder for the access to the outdoors. State of Colorado is definitely going through some stuff right now that it needs to figure out.
Yeah, but it's good to be transparent. So thank you for
Yeah,
sharing that.
yeah,
And
yeah.
to wrap things up, Mike, I always love to ask our guests to give a shout out to someone in tech that they're feeling really inspired by right now. So it could be another founder, it could be VC, community builder, anyone is fair game.
So there's one. There's the new CEO of Open Door, Kaz. He was a former executive at Shopify. Spent a lot of time at Shopify. And Open Door is a sort of institutional buyer. They're there to sort of offer. They provide cash offers for homeowners. They're a publicly traded company, and he was brought in last year to sort of do this turnaround. And he is very aggressively trying to push AI in real estate. One of the things that is problematic in real estate is there's a reluctance amongst the incumbents to want to introduce tools and technologies that are going to disrupt their own business models. It's a classic innovator's dilemma. And
Hmm.
because of that, you don't see any of the major companies who should be doing what Ridley's doing sprint towards it, because their core business model relies on monetizing real estate agents. And leaders like Kaz are sort of, pushing the industry in the right direction. And so I've been very inspired to see, how he's started to turn around Open Door, and very excited to see where that company goes.
Yeah, that's a good shout out.
Yeah.
Mike, this has been such a good episode, and I've so enjoyed having you on the Tech Startup Network podcast. And I'd love to have you share with our listeners where they can find you online in case they'd like to connect.
Yeah, so you can find our website. It's getridley.com. And then we are obviously available on social media. I'm Mike Chambers, and our handles are at Get Ridley.
Perfect. And I'll include those places in the show notes for listeners to easily find you. But thank you so much again for coming on today's show.
Thank you so much. Take care.